As Americans are becoming more interested in going back to locally grown produce, moving away from mass-marketed foods and mass-produced foods, there's been a similar interest in local craft beer, and as well as the brewmasters looking for locally produced ingredients. So as the farm to fork movement has grown over the last several years, the local craft and farm to glass movement has paralleled that growth at the same time.
We got the Centennials right here, Cascade in the next one.
Part of the farm to glass movement has been the pairing of some of Sacramento's excellent brewers with some of these new hops growers. New Glory Brewing Company and Jackrabbit Brewing Company have paired with United Hop Farm in Yuba City. New Helvetia Brewing Company is using hops from the Hood Hops Ranch. Oak Park Brewing Company is using hops from the River Delta Hops Farm. And Roostaller is using hops from their own farm out in Dixon.
So we got out here 5:30 in the morning and had to hand pick all the hops off of each bind. So it took us about 3 hours to do that.
Now we're just hand picking all the cones. This is what we're going to use to make the beer right here.
Northern California beer has its own identity for sure. Although craft beer is being made all over the United States, I believe what separates California and Northern California specifically is the availability of the freshest ingredients and the most local ingredients.
A lot of craft brewers are going out of California to get their hops right now. And that's where we saw, not as a market, but as helping out our friends at New Glory, Julian and Chris Powell at Jackrabbit, just start growing hops for them.
When Ro reached out to me, he's like, do you have some open land? I was like, sure. He's like, let's plant some hops. When he came up to me with the idea, we put our heads together, got some land, prepared the land, and then here we are growing hops.
We're here trying to pick some of the Cascade hops that have been growing here for about 5 years now. Some of them are a little past prime, but there's a lot of great hops out here still.
I work for a family business called Rivermaid Trading Company. We've been farming pears out here in the Delta for over 100 years.
Patrick is my brother-in-law, and we planted the hops about 5 years ago and have periodically come out and picked them for home brewing. This is kind of his hop farm venture.
Me and my cousin flew up to Yakima and we talked with the guys who have the real 1,000-acre hop farms up there, and they all thought we were crazy to plant it out here because we don't have the equipment or anything, but we did it anyways, and the hops grow really well out here. So it's just a combination of farming and beer drinking that inspired this idea.
As the beer industry in the western United States grew and the hops industry grew along with it, Northern California, Sacramento Valley became one of the largest hops growing regions on the planet. I think that many Sacramentans don't realize that we were one of the largest beer production regions in the western United States, basically second only to San Francisco. Here in Sacramento we had Emil Horst, who had the Horst Ranch. He had an 8,500-acre hop farm, which is now Campus Commons. He had numerous other fields. At one time he was the largest hops grower in the world. In fact, brewers all over the world would actually tout their beers as having Sacramento-grown hops in them because of the quality of the hops that are grown in this area. Growing hops is extremely labor-intensive, and so migrant workers were called in frequently to help with harvest and baling of hops. In 1913, the whole industry kind of came to a head just north of Sacramento in Wheatland in the 1913 hops riots, when I believe 3 or 4 people were killed, including a sheriff and a couple laborers, kind of emphasizing just how huge the market had become, how competitive it had become, and how much there at the time was a need for labor law. So by the end of Prohibition, most hops farms were gone, most breweries in America were gone, As breweries began to come back online after Prohibition, Northern California did see some hops production come back. However, through the 1950s and 1960s, we dealt with an infestation of what's called downy mildew, which affects the roots of hops vines. It affected crops in Oregon and Washington less, and they also mechanized first with modern equipment, which is why we never really saw a big resurgence in hops production in California.
My name's J.E. Pano, and I'm with Roostaller. We're a little brewery out of Sacramento, and we have a little farm out here in Dixon. So behind me is what we call Field 1. This is about 1.5 acres that we planted 2 years ago, and it's primarily Cascade, Nugget, and a little bit of Centennial, and it's looking great. Most of this will go into a wet hop beer we call Hop Sack. So what you're seeing behind me is really hops at kind of second year, which is typically about half of what they're potentially capable of producing at full production. And then behind us is Field 2 and 3, which we planted here in April and May, and they're coming along well. Field 3 is doing a little better than Field 2 for a number of reasons. How does the combination of the water and the sun and the soil, do the hops like it or not? So we did basically what we call a little test hop yard, about 1.5 acres. And then we were very pleased with the results, so were the folks that drank the beer that we made with those hops. So we planted some more. So we planted another 5.5 to 6 acres, added a couple different varietals. So we now have a combination of Cascade, Nugget, Chinook, Centennial, and Brewer's Gold. And Field 2 and 3, which are this year's production, should have a nice little crop, and the next couple years should be exciting. Growing hops all started with Darryl Cordy. On our bottles it says Roostaller in Sacramento, and Darryl knew the history of Roostaller and the brewing history of Sacramento, legacy of Sacramento, and he also knew that Sacramento was once the largest hop growing region in the world. And the significance with that is that when we were the largest hop growing region in the world, there were 2,000 breweries in the United States. This was back in the 1900s, early 1900s. Most of those breweries were local. Some of them were regional, but most of them were local. There were no national breweries. And those little local breweries competed on quality. And under those conditions, they chose Sacramento Valley hop. So Darryl knew that we in Sacramento had the potential of growing great quality hops, and he challenged us with that about 4 years ago. We say we grow beer. They can't grow beer in San Francisco or San Diego or really anywhere else in California, but that's something that really signifies who Sacramento is, and it's really a credit to Darryl, who knew that, challenged us to it, and we're trying to still achieve it. So we got a long ways to go, though.
Today is Hop Harvest Day for fresh hop beer to be determined. We are down in the little farming community of Hood, just south of Sacramento along the Sacramento River, and this is probably one of the biggest hop farms in our area.
The consciousness that we have around unique ingredients, fresh ingredients, I think makes us one of the leaders. Even though in beer making everybody in craft is trying to reach out, I think that Sacramento, Northern California in general, is trying to grab onto so many new ideas and lead the charge in what we are redefining craft beer.
Well, I think what's going to happen in the Sacramento area's hop growing community is it will get bigger, it will grow. But remember, it's a comeback. It's been here before, and so people are recognizing that and you know, kind of reaching back to those roots of being a hop growing community. We have some of the best soils for hop growing in the world. At one point, we were the biggest hop growing region in the world. So I think it's just a matter of you know, finding that legacy, claiming that again.
The fresh hops is not so much about the flavor of the beer, it's about our community. It's about, hey, this tastes great, and we're doing this local, and the fresh hop thing is to me is just about being local.
5, 4, 3, 2, Look at that. Look at that.
I think the most important thing that all craft beer drinkers have to remember is to keep your sense of adventure open. Go to your favorite tap house, go to your local craft brewer, go to your local store and buy something you haven't had before. Pick a style you've never heard of. Pick a flavor profile that you've never thought about having. Try pairing a beer with food the same way that you would think about pairing wine with food. And just never lose your sense of adventure. Craft beer is about adventure. Every brewer that you meet in Sacramento is trying to do something unique that's not been done before. There's a reason for that. We are all just as impassioned about this as each other. And we all want to see all of you out there find something new that you've never had before.